At Gate B7 of the bustling Atlanta airport, the terminal was loud with the usual chorus of rolling suitcases, boarding calls, and impatient passengers. The air carried the faint smell of coffee and jet fuel, mixing with the tension of a long travel day. 12-year-old twins, Aaliyah and Amira, stood quietly by the gate, clutching their boarding passes and matching pink backpacks. They were excited, nervous, too, but mostly excited. This was their first time flying alone to visit their grandmother in Chicago. Their dad had gone over every detail with them, making sure they had all the necessary documents, boarding passes, IDs, even a notarized letter of permission from him. Everything was neatly tucked into a clear folder inside Aaliyah's backpack, but excitement quickly faded when the gate agent, a woman with tightly pursed lips and eyes that seemed to size them up in an instant, stepped in front of them. "Hold on," she said sharply, extending her arm like a barrier. "I'm going to need to verify some information before you board." The twins exchanged confused glances. They had already gone through security without a problem. "We have our papers," Amira said softly, reaching for the folder, but the woman didn't take it. Instead, she crouched slightly as though interrogating them. "Where are your parents right now? Who bought your tickets? Why are you traveling?" "Alone?" The questions came one after another, rapid fire, each one laced with suspicion. The line behind them began to grow, passengers murmuring, curious about what was happening. Aaliyah's voice wavered as she explained again. They were going to visit their grandmother, their dad had booked the tickets, their mom had passed away when they were little. But instead of softening, the gate agent's eyes narrowed further. "We'll need to confirm your story," she said, signaling to another staff member. Within moments, the twins were led away from the boarding area, away from the murmurs and stares, and into a small glass-walled office near the gate. The walls felt like they were closing in. Minutes turned into nearly half an hour. The boarding process for their flight continued without them. An overhead announcement crackled. "Final call for Flight 226 to Chicago." Aaliyah's stomach dropped. She knew what was happening. They were being kept off the plane. She could see the plane through the window, connected to the jet bridge, ready to leave. Amira squeezed her hand tightly, trying not to cry. The staff members inside the office kept repeating the same phrases. "We're just making sure everything checks out. This is for your safety. We just have to be sure." But the twins could feel something else, something unspoken. No matter how many documents they handed over, no matter how clearly they answered, there was still that look in the staff's eyes, that uncheckable doubt. When the gate door finally closed and the plane began to back away, Amira broke. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "We didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. Aaliyah felt a heat rising in her chest, not just sadness, but anger. She thought of her dad, how careful he had been, how much trust he had put in the airlines staff to take care of them. And then she remembered his last words before they left for the airport. "If anything happens, if you feel unsafe, you call me." No matter what, her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She found his name, Dad, and pressed call, miles away. In his glass-walled corner office, their father, Anthony Rivers, was in the middle of a meeting with senior executives. He was the CEO of North Star Airlines, one of the largest carriers in the country. His phone buzzed, and seeing his daughter's name, he immediately excused himself. "Aaliyah, what's wrong?" The words tumbled out in a rush. How they were stopped, questioned, and kept from boarding. How they had all their documents, but were still treated like they didn't belong. Anthony's voice hardened. "Where are you right now?" She told him about the small office by the gate. "Stay there. I'm going to fix this." Within 60 seconds, Anthony was on another call, this time to the airline's head of operations. His voice was low but fierce. "I want to know why. My daughters are sitting in a holding room instead of on their flight, and I want to know now." The executive stammered, trying to explain, but Anthony cut him off. "No excuses. Get me the gate manager, the station manager, and the regional director on this call. Right now." Back at gate B7, the air suddenly shifted. The same gate agent who had been so firm before now looked pale, almost panicked. A man in a suit hurried into the office, followed by two others with ID badges swinging from their necks. "Girls, I am so sorry for the misunderstanding," the man said quickly. "There seems to have been a mix-up." Aaliyah could hear voices outside, tense and clipped, as if orders were being given. Within minutes, the girls were escorted not back to their original plane, which had already left, but to a private waiting lounge. Bottles of water and snacks were placed in front of them. A flight attendant knelt to their level, speaking softly, asking if they needed anything. Half an hour later, a small chartered jet rolled up to a remote part of the tarmac. The girls were led outside, where a pilot greeted them by name. "We're taking you straight to Chicago," he said, with a reassuring smile. The jet was quiet, almost luxurious, with wide seats and blankets folded neatly on each one. As the engines roared to life, Aaliyah and Amira finally let themselves breathe. By the time they landed, the story had already broken. A passenger who had witnessed the scene at Gate B7 had posted about it on social media, tagging the airline. Within hours, news outlets picked it up. Twin black girls denied boarding until their CEO, Dad, steps in. Anthony, who had planned to handle the matter quietly, now found himself at the center of a national conversation. Interviews, op-eds, and panel discussions debated what had happened, how it could happen, and what it said about bias, even in places where safety protocols were the excuse, but the moment that stayed with Anthony most wasn't the news coverage. It was walking into his mother's living room later that night and seeing his daughter safe on the couch, still in their travel clothes, wrapped in blankets. They looked up at him with relief and exhaustion in their eyes. "You came for us," Amira whispered. Anthony knelt down, his voice low but certain. "Always, no matter where you are, no matter who's in your way, I will always come for you." The next day, the airline issued a public apology, not just to the Rivers family, but to all passengers who had ever been treated with suspicion instead of respect. New training programs were announced, focusing on judgment, fairness, and empathy. But for Anthony, the real change wasn't in the press release. It was in the unshakable bond between a father and his daughters, a promise that went deeper than any headline. One that no gate agent, no protocol, no bias could ever break. And somewhere in the quiet space between those moments, the twins learned something. Too, that sometimes the world will doubt you for reasons you can't control. But when you have someone who believes in you without question, that belief can move mountains. Or, in this case, ground flights.